Is my makeup okay?
Yeah, you're live.
Is my makeup okay? Because I'm very excited and we have a special guest.
Yes. So, Alan, introduce our special guest.
Well, I'm not going to be long-winded, but how long have we've been knowing each other, Roz?
4 years?
4 or 5 years?
5?
Yeah. Because me and Roz correspond. We send books back and forth, and yeah, I've been knowing you since the first Faulkner in August,
Yes.
when you didn't even have a BookTube channel. No, you were a commenter. And now look at you now.
I was an enthusiastic commenter, wasn't I?
Yes.
Right from the get-go. Yeah.
I think I knew Tilly before you.
Yeah, she had a channel for a year or so before and she gradually sucked me in with things like Victober and Jane Austen July,
Yes. And your Victober video, I'll never forget it. When you dressed up and you had a tea party, that was like excellent.
But I'm on a bit of my channel's on a bit of a pause at the moment since the middle of November. But I may be back. But it's nice to do this in the meantime. It's lovely. It's a treat.
Any reason for the pause?
What I was a host for Victober in October, which was an honor and a delight, and I enjoyed it. But it kind of generated a degree of pressure, like I do BookTube, but just totally for fun. I'm not looking for any specific number of subscribers or, I'm just, I don't do smart stuff. I just enjoy talking about books. So it's just fun. So actually being a Victober host was suddenly, I felt like I had to perform, like being a host for Faulkner in August, things like that, I've just really enjoyed, but it felt one step up. And so I thought, I'll have a couple of weeks off afterwards for a little rest. And then somehow a couple of weeks spread to December, and then I got ill, and I had a kind of chest infection thing. And then I thought, I'll come back at the beginning of January, and then I broke my hand. I'm fresh out of a cast at the moment.
Oh.
Yeah, she broke her fin. She broke her left
I broke my fin. You can still see it. So I'm just getting back to normal, and I'm thinking, should I start doing some videos again? We'll see. And maybe doing this will suck me in, you see.
Say hello to Mark.
Hi, Mark. Lovely to see you, Mark.
He's sitting in the back.
Another one of our English friends. Another one of our English friends, Mark's going to appear on the show later this month.
Yeah. An English friend, but not living in England.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. He's a Czech. My fault. I spend like an hour or two every morning catching up with my friends on Boxer. I call it my ham radio. And I've been threatening to... I'm going to tour Europe, and I'm going to come visit you, Roz. I know where you live, and Gareth too. He's in Brighton, and I'm thinking about immigrating to Ireland too. So I'll see Jason Harrigan. I don't know if I'll go to Dublin or Shannon just to bother him. I don't know.
But yes, well, I think we'd all like to go and visit Mark because he lives in such a nice place,
I want to visit him because he keeps talking about his beer that's so good in the Czech Republic.
Oh, yes.
Was that beard or beer?
Beer. B-E-R-E.
It is the best beer. The best lager. Not the best.
And the kielbasa. The kielbasa. I mean, oh, my God.
Also, there's Elvis, his dog, and obviously I'm even more interested in meeting Elvis.
Yeah. So we have a comment from Mex Libris. Are you judging the BookTube prize this year? If so, is there a book you wish had made it onto the long list?
Ooh. Oh,
Are you judging, Roz?
I am. I'm down to judge fiction. I originally wanted to judge translated fiction, but there weren't enough judges for that to run this year. That's what I did last year and just loved doing that. It was brilliant. But I'm back to doing fiction as I did the year before. But I'm not judging in this round. So I looked at the long list, but I'm kind of waiting to see what survives the first round. Unusually for me, I think I've actually read almost as many books on the non-fiction list as the fiction, including one I just read that I really enjoyed, which was a book about John Donne called Super Infinite.
Okay.
I was really, really happy to see that that's made it onto the non-fiction list. Was there a book that I wish should got onto the fiction list? To be honest, when you've signed up as a judge, you get to contribute to voting for what books will be in your, so what was on the fiction list. And what I always do is I pick books that I haven't read and don't know a lot about. I mean, I researched them, so things that are trying to make it a slightly more mixed list, I suppose. I wonder if Mex Libris has one that they wish had been on the long list.
Maybe. Well, if Mex is a judge, put it in the comments below. I volunteered for fiction and nonfiction.
Right.
I got picked for nonfiction this round.
Uh-huh.
It's an interesting, but I had the. Can I mention what? I guess there's no big harm that what group? I forgot. The one I'm reading now is The Secret City.
Oh yeah. That's
the history of gays in Washington. I didn't vote for it, but I'm actually really enjoying it. It's very it goes not into the physical confines of Washington D.C., but the politics. And it's still early, so at this point in the book, homosexuality is still illegal.
Right.
And if you are homosexual in the government, you could be tossed out. And they're
tossed out meaning what? Killed?
If you had a job in the government and you were homosexual, you would lose your job.
So like the army and all,
yes.
Oh yeah.
And they're just going into some of the stories about a gay astronomer who was fired, and he's the first person to actually come out as a homosexual and says, "You are discriminating against me." He's going nowhere with his lawsuits, but it's the first person to come out, and it's actually I'm surprising at how much I like it. It's pretty good. Now,
I think the joy of the BookTube Prize for me is that it, because you have to read the 6 books that are in your group, you end up reading things that you might not have picked and then discover that you really enjoy. So, and then there'll be other things that you have to slightly drag yourself through. But
this is like a perfect example of a book that I never would have picked up on my own. And now I'm saying this is actually a pretty good. No, I can't.
Well, go ahead.
I don't want to talk too much about it because you're not supposed to reveal your opinions of them. But
I want to say something about Roz.
But I want to mention the one long list. Catherine Dunn wrote the book Geek Love.
Yeah.
Right.
And she had an unpublished novel called Toad, which was listed, and it didn't make it onto the long list. And I'm kind of upset that. But it's a dark book. I'm pretty sure. And I'm sure a lot of the judges say, I don't want to read a dark book. So,
well, okay, I'm going to get in here.
Given the choice between a happy book and a dark book, give me the dark one every time.
Okay.
No happy endings. I want to mention Scallydandling. Now, what does that
word? Can we get through some of the comments?
Roz likes to travel. Roz likes to travel, and she travels through books. And speak about that a bit.
Can we get through some comments first? I just
oh yeah, you did
we have a lot of comments, and Bad is saying hi to everyone.
Bad is right. Hell yeah.
To come visit you, maybe. And they say, "Hi, Mark. Let's go walk. I'm gonna go walk Elvis." Yeah, I can see that. Hey, MJ. Hello.
Mention her name 3 times.
And Bad is, I would not be a good judge. I would be nervous. Well, here's the thing, Bad. You cannot be, all you have to do for the Book 2 prize is read the book and rank it. There's no wrong way. You just say, I like this book better. Now, sometimes you got 2 or 3 books, like, how do I rank them? And you know something? Just pick.
Yeah.
You know?
I'm having a hard time keeping up with my own TBR.
Yeah. But I mean, I don't think, I mean, the thing about the Book 2 prize is that nobody know, you can keep your ranking completely private apart from, you know, apart from having to do it on the system. So I guess, you know, Robert, who organizes it, is the only one that could know what you've decided. So there's no reason to be nervous, really. The only thing to be nervous about is as Alan says, can you fit 6 books into the 2 months? But
it can be difficult. See, I'm doing mine as audiobooks. So I just cleared my channel, you know, my TBR, and say, this is what I'm doing. And because I spend a lot of time walking and doing chores, I can get through a lot of audiobooks in 2 months. So
yeah.
But I have, like, the Secret City's long. It's like 800 pages or 26 hours. And
do you know, actually, thinking of being nervous, I would quite like to offer to be a judge for the nonfiction. But my nervous thing is that quite often the nonfiction books are longer. And then I would worry that it would take up too much of my total reading time, you know, not leave me with enough choice. You know, if you get like last year, people got some really long like groups where they had several sort of 800-page books in, and that would intimidate me a bit.
I'm not sure. I think Robert does it totally randomly.
Yes.
But you see, if I were a computer programmer, and I was a computer programmer, I would have done it not totally randomly. I actually would have listed all the books by length, and then so you cannot get 2 800 books unless they were all 800. It would distribute the length among.
Do you know what, Greg? You should suggest that to Robert for a future year and tell him if you could set that up for him, because I think he'd be up for that, you know.
It does break the total random, and I understand also why he wants it total, because you don't want to have, but really you're just judging by length, and you're just assigning it. Well, you have a long book and just go down.
Yeah. And we're not all big hard books and classics, are we?
No.
I like a short book. I can enjoy a long one, but good things in small packages impress me. Ooh.
Oh, here's one from Next. Right. Judging fiction for the 3rd year. Wished Less is Lost. Ooh. And the Andrew Halloran one had made it, but glad to add some books I don't know about.
I want to see what this.
I don't know those 2 offhand, but
I'm looking them up straight away, Meg. So
because when I was doing the looking of, I just went to Amazon, and I think I mentioned, I just did a mood saying judging from Amazon page 0 to 5. I want to read this book. So you get a lot of 3s because you don't know them. And they just did not make it. But in the end, it'll be interesting.
Oh, now the Andrew Halloran is, I think it's The Kingdom of Sand. And it's his first novel in 16 years, apparently. And it's about death and taxes, literally.
Oh, great.
Sounds good.
See, you know, that's the kind of interesting thing you'd get, you know, different people's opinions on the different books. Now, again, in nonfiction, the long list had so many memoirs. It was just.
I love a memoir.
Yeah.
I didn't vote for one memoir, and there's still a lot of memoirs that made it onto the long list.
Yeah. I mean, in an ideal world, you'd have different categories, wouldn't you? But you know, I know that this is what's realistic in terms of the numbers of judges that have stepped forward. But you know, I'm a little disturbed that we've got short stories in the fiction, because in my mind it should be novels, but that's just me.
I can understand wanting to include short stories in fiction. None of them stood out enough for me to vote for.
Oh,
Really?
Night of the Living Res. But then they're kind of like linked short stories, which interest me perhaps more.
That's a Native American novel.
It is, yeah.
It is.
Brian Bookish mentioned it. I need to read that.
Yeah, well, I really want to read that. And as I say, technically, it's kind of like linked short stories, I think.
Yeah, and I'm also disappointed translated fiction didn't make it in, because there were at least two that I wanted to really read, you know, in the translated fiction category. But oh well, yeah. I understand not enough people volunteering.
Yeah.
You want to talk about translated fiction? Let's talk about Clarissa, Ross.
Clarissa, our darling Clarissa. Yeah. Alan and I have a special shared passion for a few different things, but in particular for the Brazilian author Clarice Lispector. She's over recent years become one of my absolute favorite authors. It's one of the things that's grown out of the whole Scallydandling project for me. There's, Alan was referring to. Yeah.
Mark says, shouldn't short stories have their own category? Yes, but you would need more judges, and they're already. I think they have just enough judges to get through fiction and nonfiction.
Yeah, sadly. There you go.
Okay, so Mark was talking about your project about reading all the books in countries.
Yeah, so that's where my channel name is Scallydandling About the Books, because one of the things that I had in mind when I started actually, you know, having a channel rather than just commenting was that I'd celebrate how the books that I choose to read from around the world, because that's a particular enthusiasm of mine, I suppose. And I've had this long-term pet project to read something by an author from every country in the world. And I'm working on, I mean, there's a whole question of how do you define a country? But I'm working on there being 195 countries. And I've got 23 to go.
That's pretty good.
Wow.
So I'm doing pretty well.
Very well.
And I'm down now to the countries that are really quite challenging to find. You know, places like Nauru and Palau and where really, and my aim is, like people sometimes say, oh, they'll do a read around the world, and they're quite happy to read something that's set in that country, or, you know, whereas I want it to be by someone who grew up in that country. I mean, and not, you know, like second generation immigrants somewhere else. I want them to, you know, so that I really feel like I'm getting some connection with someone from that place. You know, that's the motivation. So that means, so there are some places, so I've got 23 to go. I'm guessing I can probably get through about another 10, and then I'll be waiting till something is published from the remaining few countries. One that is a bit tricky, and maybe, you know, someone out there might have a suggestion for me for this, because it's a different problem, is that one of the 195 countries in theory, because they're all like kind of, you know, sovereign states, as it were, is Vatican City. Now, of course, no one is born and grows up in the Vatican.
St. Peter.
So I need something different for the Vatican City. And I possibly something written by a pope. I don't know.
Maybe. No, you see, I started my own project essentially the same as yours. Like, I saw a woman, she had a YouTube video where she did all country in 1 year.
Yes.
That's where I stole my idea from.
Yeah.
And I've sort of been stalled out because, like you, I've got most of the major countries down. There's maybe Lithuania. I'm not even done Lithuania, but again, there's these smaller countries, island nations,
Yes.
Vanuatu.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Yeah, it's going to be a while. There isn't. And what she did was she got people to give her kind of unpublished manuscripts and things, and she really stretched a point with some places. Whereas I'd rather wait till there really is a book by someone.
But you might have to sort, especially since I can only fluently read in English.
Yes. Yeah, me too.
It'd be a lot easier if I were fluent in Spanish, because there's a lot of these countries have Spanish or French.
Yeah.
And they publish in, but I am sort of limited. I could read a children's book in Spanish, maybe.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. Yeah.
But it's hard.
I want to show a card of St. Peter up here. That's St. Peter. He was crucified upside down. That's where we get the name St. Petersburg. He was the first pope of the Catholic Church.
So you're suggesting that I could read? Actually, I've already done the Vatican City then, because I've read chunks of the New Testament, but he didn't actually write them, did he? So
no.
Paul would work, but he's
not. He was before the Vatican City.
Exactly. So I don't think I'm finding my solution.
I know. I also did something. One of mine is I put Catalan as a country.
Oh, now I absolutely. I'm running a kind of a sub list of almost countries. So like Kurdistan, I've read something from there, or Taiwan, say, technically isn't a country, but I've read something from. So I have my sort of nearly countries as well.
They voted for independence.
True.
They didn't get it, but they voted for it.
Yeah.
I know. It's also, depending on where you get your list, you will have some countries that are included, some countries that are not included, because some countries may not be recognized. It's complicated. Yeah. But
here's a couple of my most recent ones. So this one is from Burkina Faso. And so for ages there wasn't anything, and then just this is a newly published. It's So Distant from My Life by Monique Ilboudou, and it's just very recently last year became available. So it's like wait long enough and perhaps something will appear. This one is Niger, and this is a bit of an oddity because it's actually a kind of like transcription of an oral epic. So it was someone from Niger who, Nuhu Malio, told this story orally, and then an American academic sort of basically arranged for it to be transcribed and translated. So, it just hits my criteria, as it were, but that wasn't going to get anything else from Niger.
Is it African mythology? Like Marlon James, or
no? It's an epic about a figure from Niger's past, like a kind of a 15th century king of the area, but then it's kind of like oral history, but then it actually gets like a bit like a Norse saga, an Icelandic saga, like you've got there's some real historical background, but then it turns into a mythical story almost, like, so.
Wow, I would like to read that.
That sounds pretty good.
I'll post it to you, Alan, but it's a bit odd, But
I like odd. I love odd. I love odd.
Yeah, Bad is saying, what a fantastic idea, reading around the world.
Roz always recommends me good books.
MJ's going to come up with. I see the comment. She's going to have a pick. I'm getting to them. Bad is going to see YouTube videos, see the difference between UK and US front covers and books. So it'd be a perfect idea to see the books around the world. It's even more interesting about UK covers and US covers.
Yeah,
when they re-edit
Katie
book
Lundstrom
for
did
the
a.
American
I'm going to
for
interrupt.
American public. They take UK
I'm going to
books.
interrupt you. I'm going to interrupt you.
Right.
Katie Lundstrom at Books and Things did a video about American versus English covers
She
just
did.
today.
Cool.
Yeah.
I want to go and
Okay,
look at it.
carry on, Greg.
Oh, I was talking about how sometimes American publishers will re-edit English books, and that really annoys me. I mean, a lot of it is. Did you? And I haven't read this book, but I know it exists. The Diary of Bridget Jones.
Mm-hmm.
There is a. I'm going to actually use the British term. It's not a derogatory term, but Bridget Jones is going to say, "Oh, I need a fag."
Yeah, yeah,
And
as in
a cigarette.
Yeah,
but the American publishers, we can't have her say that. They had to say, "I need a cig."
That's ridiculous.
But that takes away the genuine voice.
It does.
It stops sounding like a young woman in London. Which
it doesn't.
Yeah,
it becomes a translated work almost, and
Stupid.
the differences between British English and American English. There's a bit of difference, but you can communicate just fine.
I speak American. I'm from Mississippi.
So here's MJ's pick for Vatican City.
Ooh, Crossing
the Threshold of Hope by Pope John Paul II.
Okay, yeah.
So I guess that would be an authentic Vatican book.
I need to get a pen and write that.
It'll be in the comments. You can always go back afterwards and look that up.
You write it down for me too, Alan. That's good. I will. Brilliant. And MJ, is it actually an interesting read?
It says, believe it or that's ends there at the comment. Now I have seen them. I forgot the author, but there was murder mysteries in the Vatican.
Oh,
they're not published it's just set in Vatican City, and I would probably call that close enough.
No.
Well, there you got it. Then you got to read "Crossing the Threshold of Hope" by Pope John Paul II.
Yeah.
Authentically written, not born. I guess you considered a immigrant.
Yeah, he's an immigrant to the Vatican City. But
I guess
people aren't really. I suppose there might be. Do the Swiss Guards families live in Vatican City? But the likelihood of one of them writing a book is, So, I think a Pope could be the answer. And now I've got one to look for.
Believe it or not, ancestry linked us together.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And yes, actually, a lovely message to humanity. There you go. We solved one problem today.
Perfect. But not Vanuatu, alas.
Well, you have to learn a foreign language and read whatever they publish down there. Now, would you accept like a short story from that country?
Well, up to now, I have hung on in there, and I do novels, collections of poetry, collections of short stories, and memoirs or nonfiction, but at a certain point, I think I may have to accept doing if there's just a short story available or just a poem. But I'm going to hold out as long as possible to get something more substantive.
At some point, some of these countries are very small and don't have writing cultures.
No, that's what's really, really interesting. I think what's part of the pleasure of the why I do it and why I want to really read someone who's grown up in that place, and because it is about the different writing cultures. Like reading the epic from Niger, or you come to appreciate the different expectations of literature, and you can tell, like, some books you might read and you can tell they've had a very what would you say, kind of like Western style education, and they've read Dickens and Austen or whatever it is, and they're drawing on that. But it's actually more interesting when they're really, for me, when they're drawing on a local tradition. And countries where there's a strong oral sort of literary tradition, then quite often you can then capture that into the fact that there hasn't previously been a long tradition of publishing. There is that, nevertheless.
That's
there's
really interesting.
a strong tradition of
the oral tradition, and then they're, they didn't even know how to write, to put it into symbols. So that's heavy.
Yeah, but it translates, into written form relatively straightforwardly. But if there isn't that kind of, and most places have a tradition of telling stories or long songs,
Ireland does.
It's a human urge, isn't it? To tell stories.
It is. And we have Al saying, good day, British, English, American English, and then the little known but profoundly more confusing Canadian English. Eh?
Shout out to my friend Shannon. I always butcher her channel name. Shannon's book, musings, and I forget the channel names. Scallydandling about the books. People F up my channel name once in a while,
Oh, Jim, books, reading, stuff. My hand is not in the camera. It got cut off.
Jim.
Hi, Jim. Oscar Wilde wrote, we really have everything in common with America nowadays, except, of course, the language.
Oscar Wilde, the only way to rid temptation is to yield to it.
I can resist everything except temptation.
That's it.
And margaritas.
Well, margaritas are a temptation.
I had 2 yesterday.
Wish I had.
That would be good.
Lovely. I love me some margaritas.
I think another interesting, different version of English that I've sort of met in my, Scallydandling kind of efforts is Indian English, and that is because English is used as a sort of lingua franca across India, although because there's multiple other languages, and Hindi is in theory the shared national language, but in practice lots and lots of people share. So there's a lot of things written in English, but again it's a kind of like it's a different flavor of English, and I really enjoy that.
Yes, and have you read Shadaram, Roz?
No, you've told me that I should, but it's not but that's by is he American or?
I think he's English or Australian. I think he's Australian. But it takes place in Bombay, and it's a great book. It's a crime fiction type book. It's a big book. It's like 900 pages, I think. But it's a fast read, and he's got a sequel to it. There's a love story. There's a prison break, and it's all about Bombay and making illegal passports and just all kinds of, it's a great, great book. And you've been to India, haven't you, Roz? I'd love to go.
I would like to go too. My wife is going to retire a year and a half. So after that, we're totally free to travel, except for cat care, which is going to be a problem. Now, Roz, when you're reading a lot of these books from foreign countries, do you sometimes, and I know I encountered this earlier this year when I was reading a book translated from the Persian from Iran. A lot of it did not make perfect sense to me because you're dealing with a culture that we are not familiar with. And when the author's writing it, they're not giving you details about their culture because it's so ingrained that they know exactly.
Yeah.
And a person reading it is going to know, in Iran, is going to know exactly what's going on. But it felt very alien to me in some respects.
I'm curious what the book was.
It was, I forgot the name of it already. Women.
We'll wait.
What?
Women Without Men?
Women Without Men.
Yeah. Parsifal, I think is the author's name. Yes, I read that relatively recently too, and it is. I mean, that's what I was. I suppose what I was hinting
Getting
at.
It, what you learn, you have to, but it's learned by immersion. You just jump it into the lake.
Yes. And Iran or Persia, depending on what you want to call it, is somewhere that has an tremendous literary tradition, going back, hundreds and hundreds of years.
Thousands of years.
Thousands of years even, but a different one. And the things that they, so that what she is drawing on it is completely different from what I'd be drawing on if I were to write a book, and that's, that's the joy, isn't it? And so you could have described that book as a bit magical realist, but it's not the same as a, say, South American magical realism. It comes from a
different tradition
traditional mythology.
Who's the writer who wrote 40 Rules of Love? She wrote 40 Rules of Love. She's from Turkey, and
Elif Shafak?
Yes.
Okay.
I love her.
Yes. Yeah.
That's a great about Rumi and the Sherpas and
Now, Captain Howdy has had a hard time with temptation. See, we're a little behind on my comments. We get talking, and I don't know. Mark grew up there. Mark grew up with Bermudan English.
How interesting, Mark.
I wonder if there's any terms in Bermudan English that you could drop in the comments that we could just learn. I mean, I've been to Bermuda twice. It's a fun country to visit.
Bragger. He's a bragger. I'm kidding. Go ahead, Greg.
No, I'm not saying I'm Marlon James, Jamaican English. Yeah, Jamaican English. Yeah. But we're talking about Bermuda. It's just a beautiful country.
Blue water.
The pink sands. My wife and I went there on our honeymoon. We rented a moped, and you just tool around the whole island all day long in your moped, and great amount. It's so enjoyable. It was Al, speaking of Bharat, I'm reading Eastern Mind, Western Body, a Jungian psychology map to the Vedic chakra philosophy. Now that's intense reading.
Tis.
Jim, Genghis Khan, who was literate, used Persian scribes.
Yeah. She's saying that very long, literary tradition. Oh, Mark grew up in Bermuda.
Yeah, mentioned that on his channel a couple times.
Yeah. Jim was talking about Marlon James, and I know that Alan, you're a Marlon James fan, aren't you? I've read his, what is it, History of Seven Killings?
History of Seven Killings,
which I thought was a brilliant book.
It was a brilliant book.
Really brilliant book. And then I haven't actually read anything else by him, which I feel bad about because I really admired that one. So I'm it's on my kind of long list in my head. Yes, to read more Marlon James, but I haven't been particularly attracted to his series that he started because it's kind of a bit science fiction or fantasy, maybe.
I think it's the he's trying to create an epic fantasy based on African mythology.
Exactly.
I think is perfectly legitimate because we have all these huge fantasy novels that are all European. And he goes like, well, wait a second. What about my home countries? Let's talk about them.
Which, as you say, is completely legitimate. But I'm not a huge reader of fantasy, so then it doesn't call to me.
I'm not a fantasy reader either, so yeah. I have it, but I have not read it.
Yeah,
I like fantasy.
And I mean, lots of people do. It's great. It's just, it's not.
Sure.
It's not my go-to genre always.
Sure. Oh. African mythology is not my go-to genre either, but I like learning about it. There's like secrets. I feel like there's secrets in cultures. They're not telling me. I'm not in on the secret. So that's why I like to read about the cultures and let me in on the secret. I want in on the secret.
Yes, you're so right, Alan. Some people sometimes sort of think that I'm doing, this sort of, and you too, Greg, when you read things from around the world, it's like, oh, how worthy of you, what a good thing to do. But that's not the point. It's about, as you say, getting in on the experiences and that I haven't had. It's a greedy thing, not a noble thing.
It's not greedy. It's just knowledge. You want to learn. Yeah.
I want it all. I want it all.
I do too. I mean, I regret not being fluent in a foreign language, but that's
me too.
That is the product of my education at the time I grew up. That teaching foreign languages was not valued.
I say anybody who knows a foreign language is 50% smarter than me. There, I said it. I know Spanglish.
Oh, here's Jim. In Georgian, we have a word zeg for the day after tomorrow. All right.
Wow. And that's a lot neater than saying the day after tomorrow. Zeg.
Yeah, it is.
Oh, no.
It says, Greg, you are retired. You can learn one now. It's not too late. I've been trying to teach myself Spanish through Duolingo, and I got to a point where if they have subjunctive verb tenses, and it's all about switching your vowels at the end. And I'm such a terrible speller in English that I'm just as bad at spelling in Spanish. And I just hit a brick wall. And what I would need to do is go to a Spanish-speaking country for a while and just be immersed. Really force myself to pick up like a Spanish language newspaper or children's books and just go through
or TV.
TV is people speak their native tongue very fast.
Dialects.
And it's easier if you had a newspaper and you can just stop and you can like.
Okay, I hear you.
I did read one bilingual edition book this year. It was Aurora by Carlos Fuentes, and when the lines matched up, I could match the English and get a lot of it. But the problem is that the lines don't always match up because Spanish is not the same word length as English, so your pages didn't always match. It was very difficult, but
I'm going to hold up another book. Now this is a book I sent to Roz because we correspond, and one page is Italian, and the other it's all annotated by me, yeah, if you know Spanish, okay, how can I say this? I'd like to know Spanish, so I would know Italian. I would love to know Italian,
Well, the thing that I did when I was at school, because I'm so old, okay, is I did Latin, which is in some ways completely useless, although I
No.
enjoyed it at the time. But it does mean that if I'm looking at something in Spanish or in Italian, sometimes I can make a bit of a guess. It's a good root language for, so the
Very.
combination of having done French and Latin at least gives me a,
Yeah, I had a friend in prison he was a black guy, so we had to go to the heads of the prison, and we're going, he's teaching me Latin. He was. He knew Greek too.
Yeah,
And,
I did Greek too.
we dead languages, right? But we had to go to the heads and say, this white guy and black guy are at a table, they're doing Latin, so leave them alone.
But I regret now that I did that and didn't do like Spanish, or that would have been more useful. I'm just noticing Al's comment about the people that have drawn on fantasy for
Yeah. Young, Blake, Nietzsche, all use fantasy.
Nietzsche.
Mm-hmm.
I hate to correct you, Greg, but
Blake is a really interesting one. Alan and I read Paradise Lost together. Oh goodness, and as if by magic it appears.
We're trying to read that now, and I'm just rolling my eyes and sometimes going, am I getting a lot of value out of this? I mean, it's amazing what he does with the language, but he draws so much of the biblical imagery and myth that for me it's like really like ancient Greek mythology. It's like,
but I was
John
going
Milton
to
is
say
the
one of the reasons why I wanted to read Paradise Lost was because I so love Blake's illustrations or his artworks inspired by Milton. So there you go.
Yeah. Well, MJ, change the language on the TV or use Spanish closed caption. That's not a bad idea.
Yes, I when I want to kind of get my French up again, watching French language programs with French subtitles helps, because you're hearing it and reading it, and when you can't quite, they go a bit too fast and you can't quite catch it, you've got the subtitles, but in French, not English. That is definitely a good tip.
Greg, you and I are going to have to learn Spanish this year. We're going to put it on our TBR. We're going to do it. We can do this. We can do it. We're intelligent people.
It's one of my retirement, the things I'm going to do when I retire. Okay, and because I'm like still a few years off it, I can have fantasy things I'm going to do right when I retire. One of them is learn Spanish, and another is run a marathon.
Okay, I ran a 5K a few years ago.
I run 5K every Saturday morning, but and I've done a kind of the odd half marathon, but marathon's too time consuming, so that's my retirement goal.
A marathon, I was tired after my 5K, and I say run. That was I went faster than walking. Just
good for you.
I run up the stairs. For my exercise. Gets my heart beating, and I'm kind of joking. I'm a smoker. I mean, I need to get more exercise in my life. Believe that.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Al is saying, I'm fluent in a few. I recommend spending a day in a new language. Think and speak only in the new language, even if you make mistakes and slow down. Not a bad.
He's 50% smarter than me.
Well, he might be, if he speaks a few, he could be like 200% smarter than all of us,
Could be.
Yeah. Don't make me bring up James Joyce. God.
Latin, even the non-romantic, like, hold on, like Czech and verb, see the.
See is
Yeah, Latin's a trip.
Here's Mark. I am going to say something in Czech that I was taught by a Czech lady I was sort of dating. It's sort of naughty.
Here we go.
I'll see if Mark recognizes it.
Correct.
Zemvi Perdeli.
Say it again.
Zemvi Perdeli. Now she introduced it as a way to answer someone if you're in the Czech Republic and you go, how's your day going? And you answer Zemvi Perdeli. It's kind of
But
naughty.
you mispronounced it.
I don't know. We'll see if Mark is still here and puts in the comments whether he recognized my bad Czech. I'm avoiding reading Fearful Symmetry. Might be of interest.
Interesting.
Who's the author on Fearful? She wrote one other big book. Was she the one that wrote Ahab's Wife?
IDK.
I don't know. Al, I will listen to an audiobook in another language and read along with a PDF or subtitles on.
I'm intrigued by Fearful Symmetry. I haven't.
Fearful Symmetry, yeah.
It's about Blake. It's a book about Blake, isn't it? Fearful Symmetry. Now I've just.
Raz is excited.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
But it's an old. Yeah, I don't think it's not a recent one. I've seen. I know what you're talking about now.
Fearful. I don't know. I mean, who's the author on Fearful Symmetry?
Have to look it up, but it's like a kind of classic book about Blake, I think.
Wow.
Hey. So I enjoy. Yes, Northrop Frye. Yeah, it is. Yes, brilliant. Thanks, Al.
Northrop Frye about William Blake, references to Paradise Lost in the Bible. Yep.
Satan rules.
Oh, he got it. I guess it's like ground is the arse. It's close. I mean, I looked it up, and she said that it meant I'm effed up. But I looked up at a check. It's like more like I'm arsed up or something like that. But at least I got the Perdeli part right. After nearly 30 years or something.
Mm-hmm. Not bad.
Not too bad. But is it the polite form or the formal form of Czech? I don't know if Czech has that.
So when you're not reading things from like other parts of the world, what's been curious, what's your like 2023, what's been your best book so far?
I have not hit any sort of really great book yet.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's still early in 2023, so
it's too early, Raz. Too early.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
it's too early.
I would go with. I'm not even going to say it's too early. I need to catch up on my February TBR. I'm behind.
He said, my arse is grass, is how I translate that.
Right.
My grass is blue.
That's not actually, I mean, that might be not totally literal, but it's probably the meaning's probably very close.
My grass is blue. I like the blue grass.
And I thought you said Zamvi Perdeli. I think that's right. Czech has formal V and informal 2 for you. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
what took me out of my reading last night was the Grammy Awards, and happy to say my gal Bonnie Raitt won Best Song of the Year, and I was really happy to see that. So I don't watch a lot of TV. Like this morning, I didn't watch the news. I didn't want to get all caught up about politics and the news, you know. But some TV is good.
I haven't watched, but no, you're talking about the best book. I mean, the most entertaining book I've read this year was for Garbogist 1.5, Night of the Crabs.
Right.
What about giant crabs coming out of the ocean and eating people? I mean, it is so badly written. I mean, it's atrocious, but it was totally and you can gulp down that book in like 2 hours. And I imagine the author getting his scotch, getting completely hammered, and then going to the typewriter and just going this book full speed, because it's the rumor has it he wrote that book in a week.
Right.
It's not a great book, but highly entertaining.
We're going to bring up Marlon James again. This is the best book I've read this year. It's horrific. It is the language is off the chain. N-words, every other sentence. P-words, C-words, just slavery. It's bad, but I mean in a good way.
No, I have that. I have that on, or I have that as an ebook. So maybe that's the one of his that I should read next.
I have that as an ebook.
I recommend it. I totally recommend it. It was a buddy read with Courtney at Tangible Reads, and we thoroughly enjoyed ourselves. But it's a hard book. It's about slavery, and it's just graphic, you know, hard to take. You'll never forget it. But Marlon James is the shite.
Well,
Jamaica.
Do you want to know my best book of
yes, I do
so far? Well, so it's Audrey McGee, The Colony, and it's one of those books that, like last year, people kept saying was their favorite, you know, one of their favorite books, and I thought I've really got to get, you know, people I trusted said this is a really, really good book, and I think it is on the fiction list for the BookTube Prize this year, because it's a 2022 book, and it's an Irish book, and it's a kind of about colonialism, but it's also about the Troubles in Ireland, which so it's set in 1979, so that was very much, you know, when I was I'd have been 15 in 1979, so it's the news, it's kind of in my lifetime, but
Excellent.
Just a beautifully written book. I can't.
Another great recommendation from Raz.
Sorry?
Thank you. Another great recommendation from you.
And it's interesting because it's about, it's partly about language and the Irish language, and not losing the, you know, whether it's important to hang on to a minority language rather than getting just sucked into all speaking English instead, because, you know, that is more useful in the world, but should you try and hang on to your own language? So it's really excellent book.
In Ireland, they have, you know, the signs are in Irish and English.
And that this was is set in 1979, when perhaps there was a bit of a sort of debate about that, whereas I think now they've really, you know, like decided actually it matters to keep it. May be less useful internationally, but it's really important to keep your language, because language and ideas are so interconnected. Language and culture is so interconnected, isn't it?
Symbols. Language is a symbol. But thank you for the recommendation. I'm going to read that.
Yeah.
Well, it's if it's part of the BookTube Prize, in theory, it could come up on my list, because I'm volunteered for fiction too, so it might come up.
It might come up. Yep. Yep. And then the kind of thing, the oddest little book that I've read that's a sort of like an English rather than in translation is this one, For Thy Great Pain Have Mercy on My Little Pain, which is a brand new, came out in January this year. And it's a short, it's almost like a novella rather than a novel, but it's about two medieval religious women in England,
Wow.
Marjorie Kemp and Julian of Norwich. Julian of Norwich was like an anchoress, you know, she was like shut up in a room, and she her famous thing that she said was all will be well and all things will be well, which is a lovely kind of philosophy. But it's really weird because I'm not a religious person, but it's about, I suppose it's in some ways it's quite a kind of feminist book about how women used religion in the Middle Ages to kind of have a bit of their own identity and ideas. But so that that'd be another recommendation for the new year.
Yeah, I'm trying to. I mean, I tend to read my books and then I kind of forget a lot of them.
Forget them.
You go in this ear, out that ear.
As much as I'd like to get into religion, I think we'll skip that.
Yeah.
Because I'm spiritual. I'm very spiritual. You know, I smudge for this group. Smudge.
Mm-hmm.
And I pray in that. I like to believe that he hears me. But I know you, Roz, are.
I'm a totally secular rationalist. You know,
I'm totally. But when you talk about that, it reminds me of what I think is my favorite literary book of the year. One of the first books I read is Wise Blood by Flannery O'Connor.
Yeah. And
this is the one about a World War II veteran who's coming back, and he's an atheist, and he decides to form his own atheist religion, the Church Without Christ, or something like that. Oh. And it's I believe O'Connor was religious herself.
Yeah.
And so it's a very interesting look, a very dark look at religion. And I just remembered that, and I was like, what was that? What was that one that I really liked earlier this year? And I know there was a Flannery O'January event going on. I had read it for Flannery O'January, and I never participated in any of the discussions. But it's a fascinating little book. You can read it. It's 200 pages, something like that. So it's pretty short. And
I'd take a pit stop. Sorry. Flannery O'Connor was a Catholic, so
yeah,
a lot of her work is based in that.
Mm-hmm.
It is.
And have to know Catholicism, like Joyce.
You can see it is like there's struggles between what her characters are saying and believing, and what the author is trying to get across. So. Oh, Mark is asking, Alan, when are we going to read the parrot book, the Michael Chabon?
The parrot book. Yeah, that's another thing, Greg. We have to schedule that.
Yeah, let's do that April. I don't want to do it in March because we got the recognitions coming up in March, our mammoths. So
yeah, March is booked.
Yeah, April I think is good. Michael Chabon. It's a novella.
What's in April?
It's not. It's 120 pages, 140 pages. So.
Michael Chabon. Have you read him, Roz?
No, I haven't, and maybe I should. But he's a classic example of one of the people that I think I haven't read because, like big fat books by American men, don't tend to be the things that jump into my TBR.
His books.
I hear you.
Let's see, Amazing Adventures of Cavalier and Clay.
Yeah, everyone says it's brilliant.
and
He's
the
a
Yiddish
Joycean too.
Policeman's Union.
Gibran.
Those are the two that I've read, and they're both they're both very good and very different. If you were to just pick up those books and scratch out the author, you probably would not say this is the same author.
Right.
Totally
he's
different.
really good. Gibran's the shite.
Now, which one would you recommend? Is it Adventures of Cavalier and Clay, or
Yeah, that's my favorite so far. Yeah, the comic books and the just the Jewishness of it. You know, I learned something, and the satisfying ending. That ending was really good. How he tied it all up and boom. I like a satisfying ending.
I've just been reading Al's comments that have been popping up as we've been talking. It's and thanks, Al. It's interesting.
I mean, I can't read them all out because I don't want to break our conversation, and I'm trying to make sure that at least everyone can see them. I was wondering, like, if we were to see meaning in religion, the path that you follow with a comment.
He was picking up on the kind of like language culture thing, how intertwined they are.
It is.
Yeah.
It is the argument of voting considered irrational, but if it brings hope or agency, it's empty of meaning or value.
Well, you're getting a bit deep for me now, though.
Yeah. Woo!
After a day at work.
I know.
You're bringing something to mind that I was watching a YouTuber who says, it's not a book, it was political, that voting is not necessarily the best way to promote democracy.
Bullshit.
Well, you know, people have different ideas.
I'm going to use the F word. You have to vote. You have to vote.
I agree that you have to vote, but if you listen to their arguments, that voting doesn't actually change anything.
Has sometimes.
Yes, it does.
I'm not saying what I believe. I'm saying what some people.
I know you. I know.
I'm saying that we get these arguments of just spinning our wheels.
Vote, vote, vote. I used to be a God. I back in undergrad school, I was a deputy registrar, and I got people to vote, and I got people in wheelchairs to vote. Back when you called them handicapped, and they would say like, "I can vote." I said, "Hell yeah, you can." I was a deputy registrar. I am a big voter. Big voter. I'm an American, damn it.
Jim, we have two almost countries here.
You do.
I am not even going to try to pronounce those correctly, but we have two countries in the United States, essentially,
Yeah, Mississippi and Alabama.
Well, we're so polarized in the United States right now is that we're effectively two countries living in the same land.
It's scary. I get paranoid about it. You want to get into it, talk about a second civil war. Yeah, it's going to be Democrats and the Republicans. It's scary. That's why I'm moving to Ireland.
Yeah, I mean,
I think Jim was meaning like places that you might read a book from because they're so distinct from the rest of that country and are looking for sort of separatism. Like you reading a Catalonian book. Interesting. And there'll be a lot of interesting history there, I expect, and different languages. Yeah.
No, it's not the act of voting, but the agency from feeling part of the system. Association versus disassociation. A lot of it is where you're also voting. Because if you're voting in certain parts of the country, your vote's kind of wasted. Kind of. Especially if you're like the deep South and you're trying to vote for the Democrat, you're just participating to be participating. At least where I am right now, it was a battle. Who was gonna win in my for Congress? So I felt at least satisfied saying, well, I vote for the one that won, and will hopefully keep somewhat of a democracy in our country. But I know you're not supposed to talk politics too much in here, but it happens, you know.
Well, we can talk politics, but we'll stay off for religion, though. God, America is so strange. Herschel Walker, it just, out of control. Idiocy.
I think that people like Mark and Jim and I over in Europe, counting Georgia as kind of part of Europe, like you look at the American, what's happening with America, in America now, with a degree of disbelief, really. It is the truth. Because the Americans that you meet, like whether that's on BookTube virtually or that come over and you run into in Europe or whatever, or one set of people, but then you hear about another whole, I don't know, political and social culture that is and I guess that you never get that, you never encounter, I never encounter those Americans, but then you see that in the politics and you realize, my God, they're a huge chunk of what
racism is off the chain. Black people are getting killed like every other day. If I was black or gay in America, and I've talked to Greg about this, I would be a political radical. I would be, out there. It is bad in America. It gets me paranoid. Portland, where I live, is becoming really violent and like shootings, and I don't even want to go downtown anymore. It's really bad. So I'm moving.
Moving where?
Ireland. Where the radical politics are, well, they're better. They're better now. I was there in the 90s, 95, 96, when they had the border crossing. And my friends didn't want to even go up to Belfast, because their accent, they go, no, we're not going to do that. So there's no border crossing in Ireland anymore. It's cold there, but I'm used to the cold. So Ireland, man.
Okay. The one thing is, like, I'm a little too old for most countries to want me to immigrate to. Because they say, you're not working. Okay, you have money in the bank, but
He's
it's
rich.
Not going to get. It's not going to get me to a European country.
No.
Or Canadian.
I'm
in
theory,
I can move to Spain. If I wanted to move to Spain, I could.
I'm third generation Irish. I've got a grandfather, maternal. I can get dual citizenship, etc. I'm there.
But it's interesting. I love to travel, and I do when I can, and I enjoy other places and other cultures and all of that. But actually, I've never really wanted to emigrate from the UK. I think, but I like living in Europe and having all of that on my doorstep. So I have a brother in New Zealand, and I just can't imagine like you're so like New Zealand is beautiful, but you're so cut off there from all the things that excite me.
Yeah, I mean, I know what you're saying, but it's like there are times, at least in the United States, where I'm thinking it's like my life could get very sketchy because I mentioned I have a Jewish father. And, I don't have a Jewish mother, so the Jews don't consider me Jewish.
Yeah.
Right.
But some of these other people going, sure you are. And it's like, okay. And the fact that I am not religious upsets some people very much. And, I don't think I'd be the top of their list when they start. But it doesn't matter. It's like you're still on their list of people that they want to get rid of. So
now, Roz has been to the United States.
Oh yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. And
What
I
cities
really,
did
really
you
enjoyed that
visit?
very much. But only in the States. I've only been to the East Coast.
Right.
I've never been to the middle or the West.
The West is the best, Roz.
So you
The
tell me.
West is the best.
But what
I've never been
to
to
the
New
east
England,
have you visited, Roz?
Kind of everywhere from Maine down to Georgia.
Okay.
Yeah. But that's it.
I grew up on the East Coast,
That's
so
a lot.
I visited every state pretty much, at least passed through on the East Coast. I really have not been in the middle of America either.
I've never been to the East Coast, unfortunately. Now, I've been to Washington, D.C. a couple times, but I've never been to Boston or Philly or New York City, NYC. Unfortunately, I would love it there. America.
The thing about visiting New York, if you're from the UK like me, is it's like visiting a film set, or all the TV series you ever watched,
Martin Scorsese and all that, yeah.
all the books that you've read.
Woody Allen.
But I guess it's the same for you coming to London, isn't it?
Yeah.
In that you associate it with, say the London of books.
Well, I can't wait to meet my mate, Dane Cobain, in London. We're going to jam at a pub. You know that. Don't make me put my guitar on the.
No,
we don't. I visited England in high school, but I want to get back sometime pretty soon. And before COVID, I really wanted to take a walking tour. They have walking tours in England where you walk along the coast and they drop you off one place and you just walk all day. And then end of the day, all your stuff is there at the end. I'm going like, I really wanted to do that, but has not happened yet.
But you should. It's a great way. I always, wherever I visit, I always think if you spend some time walking, you get to know the place in a different way than if you're in a vehicle, don't you? You get
absolutely. I mean, you see nothing in a car really, except for just passing.
Yeah.
Thing, and
although train journeys can be a great way to get to know a place, because if you interact with other people in the train as well as where it goes, it's like another little world, isn't it?
We don't have a whole lot of train travel in the United States.
Amtrak. I love Amtrak. What are you talking about?
I live a couple miles away from a train line that's usually a commuter line to DC, but you can take the Amtrak up to like to New York. And I do want to go back to New York sometime soon. And I'm thinking the train's the way to go because I don't want to spend my whole day driving up there. But a train would be about 4 or 5 hours to take, something like that.
I love Amtrak. Going down through the Sierras, Oregon and California.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, superb.
Jim is going. A lot of African Americans are returning to Georgia in the U.S. because northern cities don't have the jobs anymore.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
I don't know why anyone would move down to Georgia. Honestly,
For the food,
And the
I
climate.
don't want to hate on the South.
Well, before I moved back to Virginia, my wife had a something in Georgia. We went out to a weekend in Georgia, Atlanta, and I went there. And we're looking at a home. Their home prices are a little more reasonable, but I am so glad we just did not move to Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
I would feel like a total outsider in that part of the world.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
I have a buddy, Ari, who wants to move here.
I can talk about Georgia all day.
You lived in Georgia, right?
I love Georgia. In retrospect, I lived there a couple times, and in 2016, when the statues came down, the Confederate statues, and so I was there, and it was really moving. Mississippi still has a Confederate flag on their state flag. Mississippi. That's how backward we are.
All right. Jim, I was in the U.S. for 10 days in 2010, visited NYC, Niagara Falls, Bryan, Ohio, and Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
I like Chicago. My wife has a cousin in Chicago who's pretty wealthy, and he has a double condo. That's where he bought 2 condos and just knocked out the wall.
Mm-hmm.
And he overlooks
Lake Michigan.
He overlooks
you can probably see Lake Michigan.
He overlooked Lincoln Park. It's just
Lincoln Park. I know Chicago, Greg. I know Navy Pier. That's where the Shakespeare Theater is. I saw Richard III at Steppenwolf. I love Chicago.
Jim hasn't been back to England since Brexit. Yeah. I can't. You blame the United States for bad politics, but
Brexit and I blame David Cameron and a lot of other people. But it appalls me. But it's the worst decision we've made in a century. But there we go. I saw Al's in Canada.
Yes,
I gather. I'm wondering whether that which end or in the middle. I've been to the 2 ends of Canada, but not the middle.
Quebec,
so like Quebec and Ontario, and then BC and Alberta. But
MJ's done the train trip from DC to NYC. So once I get off my book buying ban, I really wanted to go up and hit the Strand. I just have to make sure that someone in my 500 book challenge drops out first.
Why?
Well, I don't want to be the first one to drop out. I mean, I'm gonna finish my 100 book challenge next month.
And stop.
I volunteered for the 500.
Don't do the 500.
I want someone else in that group to be the first one to cave and say, okay, I'll throw in the towel, but I'm not being the first one to throw in the towel. And I think we're just going to look at each other. I'm not quitting until you quit.
I bet someone else secretly has and just hasn't admitted it.
I came so close to buying something last night. And, I have my rule. I have a gift certificate that I haven't completely used up yet. So technically I could have used that one, but I'm holding out for just something really important. But
how does that work with judging the BookTube prize? Because you have to get the books.
Well, that's an exception. I said
you're allowed that.
I said I am allowed to buy those because I have to. And if I'm on a buddy read and it's not available, that's an exception, you know. But
right.
this was just a $2.99 Kindle book that I maybe sort of would have read someday, and I said, well, like that's why I have these challenges that to stop you from just mindlessly buying books.
Get a daily email of books that are currently 99p or 99 cents, I guess, on Kindle or, well, you know, ebooks, and I have to stop myself from like just buying. You know, I've got about sort of 300 ebooks sitting there waiting to be read.
I have 1,000.
Yeah. Oh, you're even worse than I am.
It's the problem is when it's $1.99.
Yeah,
you don't care because it's within your budget, discretionary budget, and it doesn't hurt sitting on your Kindle. But now I look at it, well, I've got a lifetime worth of books that I've spent on $1.99, and it adds up after, because I've been on Kindle since 2008. So I've been on this for a long time.
Yeah, it's
Jim,
but it's
the
like
train from Ohio to Chicago. The family stayed had never taken the train.
Chicago is the shite. Second city. Second city.
Good.
So many great states in America, you know.
So Georgia, the country, is the same size as the Republic of Ireland. In my head, I thought Georgia was bigger. I don't know why.
Very small.
I have been to visit Georgia. It's such a Georgia, the country as well as Georgia, the state.
Yeah.
Such a beautiful place. I know Jim enthuses about it, but it is. It's just, I thought it was stunning. And interestingly, like Georgia, the state, it has top food. Really? Yeah, different, but
I'm there.
Brilliant food, isn't it, Jim?
Wow.
Al, I asked why I learned Sanskrit. Today I share the Upanishad number 6. To see others in yourself and see yourself in others is how we find our way. Guidance is timeless. Actually, one of the books I'm rereading right now is the Tao Te Ching. And a lot of that, what you mentioned right there, is echoed in the Tao Te Ching in one of the comments there. Where you're right, it is timeless wisdom from a very ancient culture. Al, we are in...
Oh, terrible. I guess he means Ontario.
Ontario. I was about to say that did not...
No, I got it.
Well, I'm from Toledo, Ohio, which is south of Detroit, and we used to go to Ontario all the time. At Windsor, you can go under the river, under the Lake Michigan, or you can go over it from Toledo and Detroit. And I saw my first striptease, my first naked bar in Ontario when I was like 14. It blew my mind. Get me out of here. It was too much. But yeah, I like our Canadian friends.
Yeah,
I would love to go. I've never been to Toronto. You know, John Irving lives there. An American. Yeah, I'd like to see Toronto.
I guess Mark was saying that you make it sound like a Seinfeld contest, Greg. I was talking about the 500 book challenge, not quitting until someone else quits. Yeah.
That's on you. That's on you, man. I could do the 25 book challenge, but 500, even 100 is over my head.
Georgian cuisine was listed number 48 of 48 European cuisines. Italy was first. UK was 13th. What does the UK have that's original good cuisine? I always thought that UK cuisine was supposed to be really terrible.
Well, that's just. I mean, I'm not like a kind of nationalist patriot or whatever, but actually, like most food, British cuisine can be really, really good. And one of the reasons is because it's a hangover from having had an empire. So we had the world's kind of cuisines at our fingertips, and a lot of that kind of got brought back and incorporated. But I'm with Jim. I think number 4 out of 48. Yeah, that's fair.
All right.
And
if I had to
13
pick
is
a
probably fair
European
for UK.
cuisine, I might pick German.
Really?
I love Jäger Schnitzel.
But
I love Jäger.
it's all pork and cabbage, John.
I have a joke. I have a joke. You want to hear it?
Sure.
Only if it's clean.
What do they call hot sauce in England?
Tell me, what do they call hot sauce in England?
What do they call hot sauce in England?
Yeah.
Ketchup.
But it doesn't work as a joke because, like, the English really love their spices.
So Al was going, the Tao was heavily influenced by Indian food. I don't doubt that.
Mm-hmm.
The Tao of Pooh from MJ is a fantastic book. So is The Tea of Piglet. Fun little books, easily digestible.
Mm-hmm.
Al, I'd be interested in the translation you're reading. A great modern translation is by a guy named Bill, goes by Red Pine. Hold on for 1 second. My copy is right here.
Here's where Roz and I get to talk.
This is translation of the Ma Wong by its DC Lau.
Mm-hmm.
I have another one translation somewhere on my shelf behind me. I have 2 translations of this book.
Over my head.
Yeah, well, a lot of the issues is when you're dealing with some of these translations is I know it's done for the poet Rumi. Sometimes the poet is not even speak Farsi. They're just going through the other poets and retranslating. And I'm going, no. You got to know the language you're translating from.
Yeah.
He shares many versions of the translation so you can get a deeper understanding.
Okay.
Well, I like me some Rumi. I love Rumi.
I love Rumi. I've done a lot of poetry readings on Rumi.
Mm-hmm.
UK from Jim has fish and chips, chicken tikka. Yeah, I mean, we attribute, you get it in Indian restaurants, but I guess it really is a British dish.
A lot of things that people, there's a British Indian in inverted commas cuisine that is completely different from anything you get in India, but is its own wonderful thing. But I bet you do. Fish and chips is just the best, Jim, isn't it? But the UK has really great regional cuisines. What you might get in Yorkshire or Northumbria or Wales, is different from what you get in the Southwest. It's people have a very limited. We used to have a lot of really rubbish cafes and so on, but good quality regional food is brilliant, and we have the best cheeses in the world. There we go.
Curry.
That's the thing that British do best. cheese and beer, as in ale lager, rather than bitter rather than lager. Okay,
now we're gonna start talking about cooking, and Roz is a great cook, and she's a baker. And when you're a baker, it's a science. You have to get really particular about your ingredients. Roz is a great baker. You never knew that about her.
Yeah, I can rustle up a nice cake. And the thing that I enjoy making most actually is preserves. So
Oh,
like chutneys and jams, and like I've just made my year's worth of marmalade with bitter
wow.
Seville oranges.
Wow.
I like
That's so
having
cool.
I like having lots of jars stacked, you know, a year's worth of jars stacked up, ready to enjoy. Yeah, and chutney is a fascinating thing, because there's a British version of chutney that is actually not really remotely like the chutney that you'll find on the Indian subcontinent, which is quite often like a fresh thing, whereas British chutney is it's almost like a ketchup, but you know, spicier.
That is so far over my head. Chutney, I don't even know what that is.
It's like pickle. It's like a pickle.
Oh, okay. I love me some pickles.
Mm-hmm. But rather than lumps of pickle, it's like more like a spread.
My grandmother used to pickle stuff. She had a cellar in the basement, and she did preserves and all that. That's very interesting to me because I like jam on my peanut butter, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and I like some orange marmalade. People don't like that so much, but I like it a little bit.
I love it. I love a bitter orange marmalade. That's the food of the gods. Hey, but hey, oh, where was Czech food?
No,
Oh, in the
it's coming down
48.
from a second. I see it. You'd probably like Czech food, says Mark.
Oh yeah, because again, it's
It's
like pork and
the
ham.
German influenced.
My
Czech number 22. I was in Prague, and I found the
yeah.
food too salty. Oh, and here's Mark.
Oh, true.
It's too, you get to drink more beer. You know, Mark has mentioned on his channel the really good Czech beer. And I remember there was a European cafe when I lived in Washington that sell like the European food, and they only had bottled beer, but they had this bottle of Czech beer that was like 18% alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
And it was some of the best beer that I said, let's go to this restaurant out there. I got my schnitzel and I got this Czech beer that was really good. It was imported from, but I don't see it out here now.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're in Virginia.
I mean, I kind of live in a rednecky part of Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Fredericksburg has Mary Washington University, so it's a bit of a university town, but still kind of rednecky.
You don't like the library there, and etc.
They don't put a whole lot of emphasis on stocking their library here. You mean, now part of it is when I lived in Washington, I had access to King County Library, which was in the top 5 libraries in the United States. So
You're spoiled.
I'm spoiled. Now, fortunately, on my card, I can still access their audiobooks and their ebooks because they have not revoked my library privileges.
Yeah.
Now, I asked the librarian, and says, do I have to turn in my library card? And she goes, no.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
keep it up.
Nice.
Apples and saltinas are not Indian in a curry, but it's really good. Weird, but good. Apples in curry?
Yeah.
Yeah, that doesn't sound good to me.
It doesn't sound like something I would normally order, but
I like apples and I like curry, but not together. No.
Who knows? I mean, in our local Indian, actually, we do have a good Indian restaurant where we live. And one day I was trying some of the dishes, different, and I ordered one of the dishes, and it was based on more authentic Indian cuisine. Mm-hmm. And the waiter just beamed and started smiling and going, Yeah, it's like I'm ordering the stuff that the Indians really like to order.
Yeah, but
It's a
then,
good dish too.
but also it's like there isn't an Indian cuisine. There's like really, really different regional
It's
cuisines
huge.
around
Northern Indian
India.
and Southern Indian,
Totally huge
totally
differences.
different.
Cuisine. Yeah, and love. Yeah, you hear most of the restaurants in the UK that are sort of described as Indian restaurants. They're mostly actually run by Bangladeshi. The chefs are Bangladeshi, so it's a North Indian, but actually not literally India. But apples and sultanas are what I use to make chutney. That's like English chutney, but ultimately, the English got a taste for that sort of thing because they were in India. But then when they came back and they needed to make it here, but they didn't have tamarind or whatever. So it's like, what have we got? Oh, we've got apples. We'll do it with that.
Okay.
Why not?
Yeah, there's like a few famous restaurants, Indian restaurants in Portland, but I'm really ignorant about Indian cuisine. I think it's vegetarian, so I don't like it. I like some meat sometimes.
I mean, there's a lot of vegetarians and vegans in India for religious reasons, but it's not.
Yes.
You can get lots of meat dishes too. I'm with totally with Mark on this. Marmite is the quintessential English. Someone's really English if they like Marmite.
What is Marmite?
It's a yeast extract kind of spread. So it's black and treacly, but salty and full of umami. And it was like a byproduct of the brewing industry, in effect. So it's a lovely salty spread that we have on toast and on crumpets, and it's brilliant. Then the Australians have something called Vegemite that is.
Of course, we know that.
Similar. Yeah,
we know that. A little bit.
Mark, I had a preserved delivery from
Vegemite sandwich.
Cinnamon marley, yummy. Okay.
That sounds good, Mark. That sounds good. I like the sound of that.
Jim, Italy, number 1, Italy, number 2, France, number 3, Spain, 4, Georgia, 5, Germany, 6, Belgium, 6, UK, 22, Czech, 47, Faroe Islands, 48, Vatican City.
But I mean, it doesn't have, that's just, Vatican City doesn't have its own cuisine, does it?
No, I guess not.
Yeah, but hey.
Mark, pistachio, peanut butter, pistachios instead of peanuts.
Ooh, sounds nice.
Wine originated from Georgia.
Indeed. Yeah.
No, I'm going to call bullshit. I'm going to call bullshit on that. Wine originated from the Greeks.
No. I think Jim's right, and Georgian wine is really good.
Well, that remains to be seen.
And Mark says beer here is cheaper than water.
Well, not cheaper than water out of the tap, I presume. Which is the kind that I drink.
And lamb and chicken are often used in Indian cuisine. Yes. They also use goat.
I love lamb. I kind of hate to admit it, but I do like a lamb chop once in a while.
I order lamb, and when I go the Indian dishes, my wife gets upset because she doesn't like lamb. But
with mint.
Yeah. Mint sauce. Yeah.
She's a cook.
Does she eat beef?
She eats beef. She's objects
So
to the theory of lamb being lamb.
what's the difference?
Because
like,
they're so
I can,
pretty.
I can understand being vegan. My daughter's vegan, and but if you're going to eat meat, I can't see the difference between eating a sheep and a cow.
Me neither.
Well, I think it's because lamb is a young sheep.
Ba 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 ba.
But
ba ba. They're so lovely. You hate to kill them.
well, chickens are even younger,
lovely.
aren't they?
Little lamb, little lamb. You want to pet it. You want to pet it.
Some people in the U.S. just have it's lamb. We don't want to eat it. I like in Australia. And here's Jim. In Australia, they have Vegemite. Yep.
Yeah.
Jim, way before the Greeks.
Yes.
I'm not getting in that argument because I don't know the history of wine.
Yeah. No, I'm afraid, Alan, Jim's right. The archaeologists have looked at it. You got to bear. I mean, you could wonder if it's like if you look at the history of agriculture and what crops were grown where and when, the ideas of where we think things come from, it doesn't always match the archaeology.
That's why I'm on BookTube, to learn something. I learn something new every day.
Georgia, aka Babylonia. There are way more grape varieties in Georgian wine than in French wine.
Mm-hmm.
No, I don't think I've ever had Georgian wine, so
Me neither.
don't know.
Oh,
maybe I should try one and get a bottle of Georgian. But see, I'm more of a beer drinker than a wine drinker, so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I like Merlot.
Czechoslovakia.
When I drink wine, I drink Merlot.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it's cheaper than water out of the tap because in bars and restaurants here, you have to pay for tap water. Okay.
Well,
the beer goes back to, okay, we'll talk about America again. Because, like, the water was polluted, so you could drink beer because it was fermented. And all the presidents drank beer for breakfast. And, John Adams, Jefferson, they all drank beer for breakfast when they weren't smoking out of their clay pipes.
Well, that was true for a lot of history, is that the water was always dirty and the brewing pot cleaned it up. So you didn't want to drink water. Al, at its peak, the Assyrian Empire stretched from Cyprus to the Mediterranean to the Sea of Persia, and from the Caucasus Mountains, Armenia, Georgia.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Al says most of the meat we eat is baby animals. Yeah, you're probably true. And
otherwise it'd be really tough, wouldn't it? Jim?
It's kind of sickening. I mean, my friend, I'm going to drop a name, Dane Cobain in London. Dane Cobain is a friend of mine, and he's vegan, and he published a book called Meat, which is a hard read kind of, and I get it. I had a girlfriend who was vegetarian, so I was vegetarian for a few years, but it's so easy to eat a pizza or a hot dog, or in America, it's like learning a language. If I had a wife who was Spanish, I would know Spanish. If I had a wife who was vegan, I would be vegan.
Jim, archaeologists have traced the world's first known wine creation back to the people of the South Caucasians, 6000 BC. All right. There we go. A little bit of history on a Monday afternoon or evening, depending on where you are.
Morning.
Morning.
God, it's only well, no, it's 1.
So we've been on this for how long now?
90 minutes.
almost 2 hours.
Yeah, we
Oh
should
my gosh.
wind up.
We should be winding up pretty soon. Let's go. Let's finish our comments.
Yeah.
In Jesus'
went
time,
fast,
wine was
Roz,
safer to drink
didn't it?
than water. Oh yeah.
Hmm.
And book time. Is that why?
Rather than just wanting it to be a good party.
Yeah.
That wedding.
Wonderful live show. Thank you, Bad. And
Thanks.
almost midnight. Well,
Midnight.
thanks for staying up, Jim.
Go to bed, Jim.
Yeah. Okay. Well, as I said, you have a great rest of the day. Nice to meet you all. Yes, Bad. And I think it's about time. We've been on here an hour and 50 minutes, and it's been fun. And we've had about the same number of people visit as our evening shows.
Mm-hmm.
Different crew of people.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of like the idea of switching out.
I'm not done. I'm not done yet.
It allows the Europeans to join in if you do a morning one for you sometimes, which is nice.
Okay.
Well, we got Mark. Is it 2 weeks from now? So another.
Yeah.
All right.
Chet, I'm going to self-promote, and I'm going to talk about Faulkner in August and how Roz has been with us for 5 years now. And you're, I just appreciate you, Roz. I really appreciate you. You've become a friend to me.
And I'm looking forward to this year's Faulkner in August and Absalom. I'm really looking forward to that.
That's one of my favorite. I've only read it once at university, so I am ready to reread that one.
Mm-hmm.
You ready for a ghost story? A grandmother in the attic. It's a gothic ghost story. It's a sequel to Absalom is a sequel to The Sound and Fury, in my opinion.
I would not say it's a sequel. It just has some characters. But here's one. I was reading a nonfiction book. It was about murders, and they referenced one of the people. He was like Thomas Sutpen. And all of a sudden they said, you don't say someone's like Thomas Sutpen and not this is a really bad dude. All right. I'm
just reading the message from Mark, and I wanted to say it's really it was lovely you were here, Mark, and I like we should have a chat sometime if you want to host something.
Mark does a lot of talks with Sean Steadfast.
With
Sean Steadfast.
Right.
Okay.
I know.
Well, if there's nothing else, I think we should cut it and call it a day. Thank everyone who came. It was great to see you. We got Bad as Rad, Jim, Book Time with Elvis. We got Al. We had a few other people show up as well. And thank you all for showing up. And let's say goodbye.
Have a good day. I have to get back on my way. I'm so behind. I just have